The story of Saul is a story of great promise that ends in great tragedy. The young man who committed the atrocities out in Aurora, Colorado, was a young man who had great promise. He was a PhD candidate, educated. All the stories, all the accounts say he came from a good home, a good family, that his general demeanor was one of being a pleasant person. But the end result of his life will be tragedy, not only for him and his parents and those who love him, but the lives of those who are lost and those who are injured, and even now their lives are hanging in the balance, and we don't know for some of them which way it will go. Their families and their friends. Great, great tragedy. Saul's life was a life of great promise. He was a great physical specimen. The Bible says that he stood head and shoulders above everyone else. That he was a capable person. And finally, that he was a person, because of his stature, because of his presence, that people would follow him. And it was a time when Samuel had become aged, old, and the people were concerned who would lead them after he died, because unfortunately his children weren't following in his footpaths. And so they said, give us a king to rule over us so we'll be like the other nations. And so God listened to them and instructed Samuel to anoint Saul as king, the first king of Israel. His destiny was to deliver Israel from their enemies, the Philistines. And he had set out about doing those things. And God had given him a task to carry out. It was concerning the Amalekites. They had troubled Israel on his way out of Egypt. And God had a score to settle with them. So he instructed Saul to go and destroy them, destroy everything that they had, to wipe them completely off the face of the earth so there'd be no remembrance of them. Saul heard, but did he listen? Isn't that what happens on a lot of Sunday mornings? When we come to church, we hear, but do we listen? We are creatures of free will. We're not wind-up robots that God sends out here every Sunday morning. But we are creatures of free will with the ability to make decisions, whether for good or for bad. We see that played out in the world every day. Whether for good or for bad. Saul had this great promise that he could unify Israel, that he could deliver them from their enemies around about. Before he goes to this task, he numbers those that are to go up, and there are thousands and thousands and thousands of them. Men trained in the weapons of war and trained in battle, able to go out and to do such a thing. The anointed king, Saul's story. Saul had a good start. But it's not how you start that counts, it's how you finish. It's how you finish. Paul said, my time is at hand. I've fought a good fight. I've kept the faith. His life, his portrayal of his life is a rare one, one that begins well and continues on to that final destination with a good ending. Would that we could all say the same thing. We've had our ups and downs. We've had our times of disobedience. Times when we would not obey the Lord. But we're still here. Because we're not under the law, we're not under the Old Testament commands, we are under grace. Saul was become God's agent. Are you God's agent this morning? Are you a secret agent?